All right, and we're back. This is the second installment of Lunch Talks with Matt and Brendan for today. And today we're going to start with something a little bit different from the political philosophy. It still has a lot of political applications, and we've kind of thought that each installment that we do would be just the continuation of our, as I had mentioned, of this ever-existing conversation. And so, we can just keep it going. And this was something that I wrote down that I thought would be interesting, because I have all these podcast ideas. And it's the idea that I think if you talk to a lot of people in America, and this doesn't really just have to do with political party, but I think a lot of people in America would say we are the greatest nation on earth. We are the richest nation on earth, and we are for damn sure the most powerful nation on earth. We can, if we wanted to, we could just wipe out the rest of the world, and that's what Americanism is. And it's interesting because, and I will say for sure, I think more politically right, ideology supports that. I'm not necessarily saying that the left doesn't, but I think the right supports it a lot more. And then it's very interesting because, and this is something that Bernie Sanders has been using a lot, is why can't, and this stems from the idea that also a lot of people say, you just can't fix society. Society has a mind of its own. It's made up of a lot of people, and in fact, society is the most democratic system in the world. Which in fact, this is funny, I'll go back to this, something that Ryan had mentioned. But society is the most democratic system in the world because whatever the majority of people want happens. If the majority of people would rather see this McDonald's open in a city that doesn't have it versus the local chicken joint that's been running there for 50 years, McDonald's is going to come there. They're going to see, oh, okay, there's a demand for it. We're going to build one there, and then all the people are going to go there. It's because society turns out to be the most democratic system in the world. And so back to what I was saying, society can't really be fixed because one person can't override the majority usually. But then my question is, if we are this quote unquote greatest nation on earth, or quote unquote most powerful nation on earth, or quote-unquote the richest nation on earth, why can't we create at least a domestic society that is objectively good for our posterity? The people who will come after us.
And I think what you're saying is totally focused on the misnomer of saying that, greatest nation on earth, whatever, because if that were true, we would be creating the greatest possible outcome for our posterity. But this goes back, I can compare this to religion in the way that people allow their geography to form their views on everything.
I just put a little water in myself.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So people allow their geography to form their views about life, about other people. Xenophobia is common with this because people are like, okay, you're different than me. That means I dislike you. But if that same person with that same exact kind of personality of allowing that coming into them were born on the other side of the world of let's say America and ISIS. ISIS hates America, America hates ISIS. If you were an ISIS person, or if you were someone born in the region that had access to the kind of thinking that ISIS has, what you would do is you would align with that and hate Americans. But that same person, if they were born in America, they would align with that and hate ISIS.
Same internal person.
Yeah, same with what we talked about the last time with the pathology. Yep. Same pathology, different medium. Anyway, religions form like that. Your philosophical views are formed like that.
Language,
everything. And when are we going to allow ourselves to stop letting what we think about life be formed straight and narrow by what we're told from the outside? And I think definitely you have to do research, you have to listen to other people, but what needs to happen is, number one, it has to resonate with who you truly are, not with your ego trying to be able to get along with other people. Because I think that's a lot of, people are social, we are social creatures, and we crave belonging to, a bigger purpose for ourselves. But when that can become destructive, like with Hitler, like, can you imagine how powerful it must have been to be standing with the people? Sounds weird, but if you were one of those people and everyone's screaming the same thing, you're all focused on the same thing, you probably felt very good.
Think about it like if you're at the Super Bowl, you know, and your team, or let's not use Super Bowl because people are more, enthusiastic about college football. If you are at the national championship and your team, you know, whatever team it is, just intercepted it on their 20-yard line and is running down to the touchdown, and your entire side of all the stands is your team, and you're standing up and rooting. I mean, you know, your body doesn't even know what's happening, you know, because it's like all
what
this
reference does it have?
All this enthusiasm and all this like excitement is going on at one time. I mean, you feel, you know, engulfed in like excitement.
This wave of humanity just all for the same thing.
Yeah, and like you're saying, imagine what it was like, and supporting your team running down for an interception for a touchdown to win the game is nothing compared to what Hitler wanted to do. You know, Hitler actually wanted to run the world.
Yeah.
You know, and the idea of that, I mean, there's only one world. There's a lot of football games, but there's only one world. And if you were to run that one world, that is, I mean, I've never really thought of it from that point. But yeah, you can probably have a huge amount of, feelings of excitement for that.
Oh yeah, totally. And another thing, I'm sorry to keep on bringing up this same author, but Wilhelm Reich, when he was addressing the little man, if you didn't listen to the last one, it's the person who makes himself small, allows their views to be formed by other people, and lives in a state of pushing other people down because it makes them feel insecure about themselves. Anyway, he said, "I don't pity you, I fear you, because it is an immense responsibility that all of us have to be that drop in the ocean, to be that one part of the grand scheme of humanity of living for ourselves. But the person who does not live for himself seeks validation in a leader figure. They're seeking direction if they don't have direction. They're seeking higher purpose if they're not going towards a goal or something. If you notice, the people who are the most like, they try to like tear down other people, or they try to bash other people, whatever, they're normally not really like well together themselves,
right? And not in meaning trying to, objectify or generalize.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who feel insecure about themselves want to try and take that out on other people. That happens a lot.
Every day.
And I'll come back to that. But when you were mentioning the same kind of person in the Middle East that would maybe form under ISIS and someone in America, and you've watched Star Wars 4, right? A New Hope, the very, very first Star Wars.
Yeah.
All right, and I trust hopefully that people have been who are watching this podcast. This is Star Wars. The story of an orphan boy who becomes radicalized after a military strike kills his family. He is indoctrinated into an ancient religion, joins a band of rebel insurgents, and carries out a terrorist attack, killing 300,000 people, and that being on the Death Star. Now, wasn't that a happy story for Luke to do that?
Yeah.
And yet, if someone does that under Islam, no, I correct myself, not under Islam, under Islamism, trying to spread Islam trying to violently spread Islam across the world. I in no way mean that, as Islam is a conduit to violence. That is not what Islam is. But if someone were to do that under ISIS, and you're an American, doesn't that seem, radicalized, terrorist, evil, disgusting scumbags?
What are we? The same people who have like that same kind of extreme view, that same kind of, you see people get worked up into this kind of hysteria, this fervor. You saw it happen a lot back in the day, not as much of this extreme, like, visceral response to things. I think the most recent one is the reaction to Ebola.
Yeah.
Did you see people on the news losing their shit, man? Like, oh my gosh.
And how many people had Ebola in America? 2.
too. And it's this kind of like, not many people may be familiar with the ideas of psychotherapy with suppression and repression, but when you have a society that has a form of suppression where your natural tendencies can't be carried out, those generally get carried out into the direction of political or religious extremism, forcing your views on other people, or extreme bodily tension. That's very common. So you see these people who they basically just channel that energy to something else, and it can happen in a mass group of people. The more people you have, the more it kind of like gets this buzz where everybody's like, "Oh, Ebola, Ebola."
Absolutely, yeah. Now, and something else that you had mentioned that, and it's going back to that idea of the internal person is the same person either in America or the Middle East, but they are raised under two different things, and that's where I believe religion and language are almost the exact same thing. They try to speak the same language. I believe that religion, all across the world, nearly every single religion, its hope is that its constituents or its followers are compelled to love, and I believe that's what Christianity is, Islam, Buddhism, you name it, they got it. But, the idea is that there are some things like proselytizing, and evangelization of essentially the idea that all people should be the same religion. I think that is just as radical as saying all people in the world should speak English.
Yeah.
Well, they were raised in a different place. They only grew up knowing Arabic, or French or something else. They were never exposed to English. Their family was a family that spoke Arabic, and they're not going to change. That's intrinsic to who they are. So why would you try and say, oh, the entire world should all speak English?
And if they don't, they're wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's radical. I think the base that Pope Francis has taken, which is I love him as a pope. And I'm Episcopalian, so he's technically not my pope, but I still love him. But it's the basis that we accept everyone, we love everyone, and there should be, it's not like. I mean, it reminds me of a lot of things, in history, but it's the idea of saying, hey, are you Catholic? No, well, you're not allowed here. I mean, isn't that the same thing as, are you white, which they can figure out visually, and they say, no, you're not allowed here. I mean, why have we said that English doesn't have to be the worldwide language, and that segregation is wrong, but proselytizing is okay?
And it's indoctrinated to kids, like, worldwide almost. It's in our schools, man. It's not only in our private schools, but it's also in public schools with the indoctrination of this is the greatest country ever.
Yeah.
I experienced things like that. I mean, well, it's kind of hard to remember, but I feel as if I experienced that when I was in public school a long time ago. But it's so widespread.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but taking that idea of these people who are indoctrinated. And it goes back to this video that I just showed you, and I'll play this, and hopefully you can hear it on the podcast.
I love this.
But it's from Amy Mullins, and she's I believe a runner, an athlete that lost her legs, and it's her kind of story with that. So take a listen to this.
I was speaking to a group of about 300 kids, ages 6 to 8, at a children's museum. And I brought with me a bag full of legs, similar to the kinds of things you see up here, and had them laid out on a table for the kids. And from my experience, kids are naturally curious about what they don't know or don't understand or is foreign to them. They only learn to be frightened of those differences when an adult influences them to behave that way and maybe censors that natural curiosity or reins in the question asking in the hopes of them being polite little kids. So, I mean, I just pictured a first grade teacher out in the lobby with these unruly kids saying, now, whatever you do, don't stare at her legs. When, of course, that's the point. That's why I was there. I wanted to invite them to look and explore.
And it's that idea that she's mentioning there that, these kids are trying to access and acquire, that curiosity, that natural curiosity that they have, and it's being suppressed. You know?
Oh yeah, and one of the other things is honesty, man. Like, so a kid is born into the world and they speak what they notice. How are we on time? 15 minutes?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so I might bring up this video. It might mess up the flow of conversation, but there's this one video, this one movie called The Cosmic Giggle. It's kind of out there. It's really weird. But anyway, they have all of these funky characters come in and they talk about life and religion and spirituality and all kinds of stuff like that. One guy, he's talking about how you're born into this world and you say what you notice. You say, "Oh man, you see the person in the wheelchair," and the little kid will be like, "Hey, look, that guy's on wheels. Like, I've never seen that before. Isn't that interesting?" And you're designed to cry when you want to cry, to feel how you want to feel. And for some reason, I don't know why, but that's not allowed in our society, to just be authentic. Mm-hmm. And so you get these people who like in a job or in school, like it happens to me in school for sure, is that you have like this face that you have to put on to be professional.
That is a great point, to be professional.
Yeah, and it's not who you really are. And the problem is, we would all just function so much better in a relaxed way like that if you think about class and class. Very, very relaxed settings. You don't have to be like, no, the video can't see me right now, but sitting upright in your chair,
right.
your feet are below you, and like, you know, you can't move your head to the left or the right.
Right.
In those class environments are where I feel academically and intellectually like more free to experience, and everyone in the class can talk and input, and it's a very, very, very wonderful learning environment.
I mean, it's the fact that people were sleeping in class.
It's sad.
And yeah, I mean, it is extremely sad that they were doing that, because that was a hell of an experience to have. But the fact that people were sleeping in his class, and it's not that he didn't care, but it's the fact that he had the respect for them to say, look, that's okay if you want to do that, you know. And he even said at the beginning of the year, I don't know if you remember, but you don't have to take notes. He did not care, and that's all we ever did was take notes, you know. We never really did anything else. We wrote essays and we took notes. But he said you didn't have to take notes, so that pretty much cut out what you had to do, you know, requirement-wise. And he was just like, look, they don't have to take notes, but when I give them the test, you know, we're going to see where they were on that, you know. And it's the fact that it was a relaxed enough setting to where people were able to sleep. But
can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
So you said at the beginning that he said he respected us enough to say, if you want to sleep, you can sleep. I have this concept, this idea, that it had nothing to do with his respect for us, but his respect for himself. You see, the small people in life, they want to control others. They want to impose their control because they feel like they're out of control, and they try to use fear, guilt, shame, or one of the three main methods of manipulation that small people use to bring other people down. The big person, per se, I don't know what other way to word this, and I'm not saying someone has more value or less value. This is the only way I can put this into verbalize this, is that the big person, they don't need your acceptance to realize that they're okay. Like,
it's kind of like little man syndrome, you know, and in no way meaning that all short people are that way or all tall people are that way, you know, but I totally understand what you're saying, because being tall myself, being 6'1", I'm not used to being shorter than someone else, and when I, like, you know, when I see it 6'3", you know, or 6'4", I get that feeling of little man syndrome, of inferiority, that, you know, it's like, I don't like looking up to people, you know, and everyone does it to me. You know, literally they look up to me to talk, but I can't imagine if I was actually, like, you know, 5'8", you know, where you look up to pretty much everyone. You know, I can see where that idea of little man syndrome actually comes about. That, you know, when you are under that feeling of inferiority, you feel like there's some kind of something taken from you, and so you need to take it back.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we've seen that before in former teachers that will, you know, remain nameless. But it's the fact that, you know, they were in a state where they felt like their inferiority needed to be taken over with a superiority. And people who are in that superior state, who are the big people that you're talking about, understand and are confident enough in themselves to say, I don't need that, and I think that's a huge point, that if there's anything that we could try and help do is say, understand that you are valuable. Value is not calculated in height or in ability or even in ideologies or even
Or what
in
other people think of you.
other people think of you, intellectual, state, anything like that. Your value comes in the fact that you are a human being.
And it can't be taken away, and it can't be up or down. It's just you are you. You are a part of, and if I may say this, I believe you're, not necessarily believe, but I think about this, entertain this notion. You're just another part of the entire universe. Like if you look at the tree coming out of the ground, you don't differentiate that with the rest of the world. We're just like a tree. Like we're physically a manifestation of that. And as if I'm open to different coming along through science. Maybe the Big Bang Theory may come to another theory of creation. But anyway, if you look at that, and if you also look at the mysticism across all religions, everything in the universe, the entire universe, originated from one single point. What happens if you chop your arm off? That's still your arm. Myself and the star across the universe came from the same point. You cannot have your value taken away by not having something because you already are everything.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it's the idea of that, well, you're only a drop in the ocean, but the ocean is made up of, of drops of water.
Yeah.
It's that same thing, I think, that you could apply to a science base. All we are, and this is really weird, but all we are is a composition of chemicals. That's it. That is absolutely freaking it. Our cells are only a composition of chemicals. We think, well, we got the little living cells. Well, the border, of the cell, essentially, the cell wall and the cell membrane are chemicals. They're
animated matter.
Right. They're and they're phospholipid, bilayers. Yeah, I couldn't remember the word. So it's chemicals. The goo and all the stuff inside is all a chemical, manifestation into one little, like you said, being, life evoked piece of matter, and all of that comes together through electrical signals, which in themselves are electrons going through their chemicals. And remember, chemicals doesn't have to be a liquid poison or a toxin. Chemicals are everything. It's anything that is from the periodic table of elements, which is everything. And that's the weirdest thing, is that the same chemicals that you will find in a star burning, for us, 93 million miles away, that we look up every single morning and then we see going down every single afternoon, that star is made up of a whole bunch of hydrogen atoms that are fusing together to make helium, and then that energy is released in thermal waves. We, in the air that we are breathing, it has hydrogen in it. In fact, a lot of it is composed with another hydrogen and an oxygen, and that's called water.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy. The same hydrogen, not the exact same molecule, but the same internal being that we were mentioning earlier came from the sun. It came from that original point. It came, and it's now in the sun, and it's now in the air we breathe, and in the hydrogen that passes through our body to pretty much make us living beings. It is, in everything, and I think that's the point that that you need to make, is that we are all really the same. We're all made up of almost the same chemicals. We are all drops in the ocean. Humanity is 7 billion people, and growing. Well, you can't get to 7 billion without having one. And that I will link to. Not link in the thing, but in the next video, I think we can talk about is that idea of inferiority and superiority, and the idea of pro-life versus pro-choice. I think we could go on to the next video, and then also something that I and watchers don't know this, but Brennan, this. I try and observe things and figure out things, and once I actually come to like a development of something or a thesis, I write it down on this list of theories and observations and beliefs that I have. and that I think can go to the lone lottery effect that I developed, and we can talk about this in the next video. By the way, so check that out. But it's that idea of, all people really need to understand that they are equally as important as another person. And I think that is the fundamental argument that was made in the 60s in the civil rights movement, that segregation is only segregating two things of the same species. Yeah. It's like saying, well, here's a whole bunch of hydrogen and here's a whole bunch of hydrogen. Let's split it in half and put them in different places. You don't have to do that. They're both hydrogen. Now one hydrogen might be a different, and this isn't good with hydrogen, but let's say with carbon, one carbon is of a different isotope, than the other. One's carbon-14, one's carbon-13. Both still carbon. Both still have, 6? I
think so.
Protons. It is still the elemental same, atom. Still the same molecule, or element, I should say.
Structural isomers.
Yeah.
Are we all just structural isomers of each other?
Exactly. I think that is a great point. We are like structural isomers of each other. That just one little rotation, one little gene that is changed makes us different. And now we meet a whole lot of people who are turned 180 degrees from what we are, believing and understanding, but we're still the exact same organic molecule. Which is, I think special to humanity. But that puts us at 27 minutes, so I think that's a good point to stop. So we will stop this edition of Lunch Talks with Matt and Brendon, and hopefully we can continue on this one conversation that we will have on these podcasts. So thanks for listening.